episode of Shrink Chicks. Today we have the greatest guest that we're so excited to introduce you to, Juliane Taylor Shore, LMFT, LPC, SEP. Jules is a therapist specializing in trauma recovery, interpersonal neurobiology, and couples work. In addition to her work with clients, she teaches therapists how to integrate neurobiological discoveries into their clinical work and has her own podcast, Why Does My Partner? We are so thrilled to have Jules on Shrink Chicks today to learn how we can apply her work to our relationships. Welcome.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for having me.
We're so excited. I was just saying off air that I saw Jules at the Psychotherapy Networker 2 years ago, and I was just enamored by the information she gave and the way in which she talked about it. So I was so excited to bring her on today.
Oh my gosh, I am fangirling right now.
We're
because I love your
fangirling back. Oh,
everyone's fangirling each other. But I will say, Jen was texting me from.
I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, Jen's texting me from your talk, and she's like, I am listening to the most amazing thing. This woman, Jules, is incredible.
Oh my
And
gosh.
your work is amazing. And I know you have a book coming out. We could talk a little bit more about that. We are so excited because your work should be in the hands of every single person, I think.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys so much.
I
This is
think
brilliant.
It's amazing. I think there's something about like neurobiology that I think is so interesting.
Mhm.
And I think the more you can understand your own neurobiology and others' neurobiology and how it like impacts our relationships, it's so helpful in a way to almost like not attach meaning to certain things.
Mhm.
So I'll just let you get into it. Can you tell us about like the neurobiology, how it affects us? Let's just dive right in.
Oh my gosh. Well, first we would have a 17-hour podcast and I would
Yes,
only be
just
getting
fine.
started.
People would have to take naps in between.
Right? So here's something fun when we're thinking about relationships. So you in the very, very lower part of your brain. So let's think about it. I love Dan Siegel's work. I'm a huge fan. I trained with him for a long time. And he talks about the hand model of the brain. And so he has this thing where he says, well, you can make a fist with your hand. So the palm part of your hand is the brainstem. And then you put your thumb in the middle of your hand and then wrap your fingers around it. The thumb would be the subcortical part of your brain. And I use that language really particularly. Some people would say limbic. But I'm here to like blow our minds open around what is actually down there, because it's way, way more than limbic system. You've got, I'm going to throw out geeky science words. Are you
We
ready?
love that.
Everybody can
We're
just
here for
ignore
it.
them. Anyone who doesn't want them, just let them flow on by you. It doesn't matter. You've got your basal ganglia, the default mode network, the mentalization network. You've got so much going on down there. We don't want to just call it a limbic system, so I call it the subcortical. And then the neocortex wraps on top. So in the very, very bottom, you've got two systems that are constantly working, I want to say in tandem with each other. There's the seeking system where you get wants and needs met, the drive to like move forward and create things and be in relationship with people and be connected. And that's in your midbrain, which is the top of your brainstem. And then you've also got your safety system, which is always scanning 4 times per second. I'm going to slow down and say that again. 4 times every single second. Your safety system is scanning. Am I okay? Am I not okay? Am I okay? Am I not okay? And those two systems operate both way down in that brainstem area. So when it comes to relationship, you've got one part of that system going, wait, am I safe enough? And the other part of that system going, oh, but I really want connection. I'm going to be moving towards the things that are going to feed me in this world, including nourishment like food and shelter and stuff like that, but also people, because we're an interconnected species. Wow. Oh my gosh. So it's really hard to feel both safe and connected at the same time. Oh, right?
Yes. And that's why we all have jobs.
Right?
That's why we're recession proof. Yes.
Yes.
Right, totally. I am a trauma therapist, and I train people all the time. I tell my interns all the time, you know what? Even if all the trauma went away, we will still have jobs. We will still have jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
Because being human really is this hard.
Yes, it actually is. And speaking of trauma, right?
Mhm.
Because, I know you said we scan for safety 4 times per second. Does that
Yes.
change if you have gone through trauma, or if you like tell
Of
me how that
course.
affects your brain and what will
Yeah.
happen in that?
Okay, so now we're going to drop another piece of neurobiology. We're moving
Right.
higher up in the brain. So how are we making this assessment? So your subcortical system has this lens. It's helping you see the world through. And I like to call it a psychological floor. It's part of your implicit memory system. And here's the way the brain works. This has to do with how your brain is wired to make sense of reality. So you walk on this thing all the time that tells you about how the world works, and you walk on it as real and as unconsciously as the floor you're walking on all the time. And what tiles make up your floor, what rugs are on your floor, they're completely different than mine. So the way the wiring works is that the implicit memory system, that psychological floor, is sending information up to the neocortex, and the system that's going, what's happening right now, is also sending information up to that neocortex. Those mix together, and that is actually how you see reality every moment of every day. I say it like this: your brain is wearing history-colored glasses, and you do not get to take them off ever. That's just your wiring.
Ooh.
So if you have trauma in your history, right? So if I lived in a world where moving towards people was dangerous, and my biology says moving towards people equals survival, then my biological system and my memory system know two different things that are in competition with each other. So of course I scan the world through those history-colored glasses that said people suck.
Right.
And they're going, oh my gosh, that person looked at me funny. They probably hate me now. But really they were like burping or something.
Right.
And trying to cover it up because they didn't want
Right.
to, look weird in public.
Right.
Right. But how I see that and how the person next to me sees that is going to be completely different based on what your history is. So, and your history is unique as a fingerprint to you. So you have the safety system that's using here and now content plus your entire history, and in 1/4 of 1 second guessing whether or not this is okay or not okay.
Wow.
I know you can't beat it with 1/4 of a second.
Right. Right. It's happening so quickly.
No.
Do not think that you're going to shift that. That is not that's not possible. You can respond to it. You can notice, oh, wow, my history is coloring every single moment. And that's brilliant, actually. So I have a daughter who's 9 now, but when she was really, really little, she would discover grass. I'm thinking back when she was 6 months old, and she's laying on grass and she's feeling the grass, and she puts the grass in her mouth and she's touching the grass and rolling on the grass and smelling it, right? That's her learning about grass. She doesn't know what grass is. Now she runs over the grass to get to the bug because the bug is really interesting, right? And she spends hours studying the spider because she doesn't know enough about spiders yet. Later on, that'll be old news too, and she'll be fascinated with an iPad or something, right?
Yes.
So thank goodness our brains do this. If they did not, you would have to rediscover grass every single time. You could not function. We would not have made it.
Right.
If your brain was not wired this way. So it's great that your brain wears history-colored glasses. It's an enormous time saver. I wouldn't know what a chair is.
Right.
I have to refigure it out every time.
It's
brilliant.
It's brilliant. And also it's such a nice, because I think when you first started saying history color God, we were all like, oh no. Right.
Right.
Oh no.
I say,
fucked, yes.
Totally. I say thank God.
Yes.
And maybe you're only kind of fucked.
Right.
I
Right.
like
Just a little, right? It helps
And we
us
can
too.
work with that. Well, but
We can
it's
totally work with that.
it's an interesting thing. I mean, how many times we've had couples come in the room that say, you know,
Mhm.
I'll be in the middle of a fight and I know that this is dumb and I know I want to be close to this person and I know I love them and yet I cannot stop myself.
Exactly. Why am I still fighting with my mother? I know you're not my mother.
Yes.
But right this moment, I am fighting with my mother.
Right? And like this thing of like, I desperately do want to be close to you. And I don't know if I even give a shit about this thing I'm fighting with, but I can't seem to stop it. And there's like this stuckness that comes. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the subcortical brain is working way faster than that neocortex top part of your brain. So think about it like just two different speed settings. And the one that's going really fast has lots of jobs around keeping you safe and getting your needs met. And the one that's a little bit slower is great at nuance. And by the way, is the part of your brain that's more wired to do that nuanced relational connection. So I need my right prefrontal cortex engaged and in relationship with my subcortical brain in order to be in a relational space physiologically. So, ugh, right? The part where you're going, oh, wait, I can't seem to stop myself. That part of your brain does actually have a brake system, but it requires a choice. I'm a really big fan of. I give all my couples this tool. I like to call them time ins.
Oh.
Rather than a timeout. So a timeout is great, and I love
Yeah.
timeouts. I have no problem with timeouts. I love them, love them, love them. And there's an alternative kind of in between space that I'll give my couples where it's a time in, where we pause the conversation on purpose with a cue or keyword. And I have my couples make up their own. And when that happens, everybody stops talking and everybody gets into relationship with their history for a minute, with their own inner experience, with whatever emotion is coming up, and see if you can be a little kind towards the emotion that you're having. And the reason I care so much about kindness is from that neurobiological perspective. The front part of your brain, when you have a little bit of kindness towards yourself, sends GABA, which is a calming neurochemical, to the subcortical areas that process fear and internal emotional pain.
Wow.
They're wired directly to it. So if you would like to calm down fear and you would like to calm down pain, being kind to yourself is 100% key. And here we are living in this world. I grew up in the States, right? I'm a US mutt, lived all over the place. I moved a ton as a kid. So everywhere I've been, I think I've heard the same message all over the US, which is be really tough and grit it out and be harsh on yourself, because that is the way you will improve.
A few weeks ago, we had Dr. Kristen Neff on the show.
She's
and
amazing.
She's amazing, right? I know. We love her so much. And I love, but this thing, people think that you have to be mean to yourself to grow. Like we have this really fucked up societal belief about like, that's the only way to have motivation.
Right. Like
It's pretty sick.
Yeah. Like it will
is.
support our growth in some way. And so this is why I love like talking about the neurobiology piece of it, that it's actually the opposite, that it's so important that you're kind to yourself in those moments.
And if you're leaning into that history going, I should be harsh with myself and forget to be kind, you're not crazy. That's exactly how the brain is wired.
Right.
And by the way, we were taught wrong. The brain is wired to calm you down with kindness, not with harshness. But it can also calm you down with firmness. So I say loving firmness towards ourselves. So if I were in a space with my husband where I am, right, towards him, and I'm going, and I have that little moment where I go, I do not think I am fighting only with Adam right now. What do I have to do? I have to put in a pause. I have to go, Jules, stop, sweetie. Hold on. call that time in. And then we can both pause and come into relationship with ourselves before we turn back and go, wait, what were you saying?
Right.
I think we're maybe missing each other here.
Mm.
Right? And that means that we can still have the conversation, but we're
Yes.
adding in a little bit of slowness so we can keep that top brain online.
Yes. How, because I'm thinking about, right. So if someone's listening to this, they're not used to taking that pause, doing that time in, right, in their relationships specifically. Is there anything, like any sort of practice you would suggest that someone can do to start to like integrate it?
Yes, I have a ton. The first one would be a meta conversation with your partner. You can't do this without an agreement. So it would be an agreement that you would set up when you're not in conflict, that in conflict, maybe we could try this out and see how it goes. And the other suggestion I would have with that would be that you commit to trying it out for a good 3 to 4 weeks, even if it goes really, really badly every time, before you make a decision about whether or not this tool is helpful for you.
Oh, I love that.
Right? Because practice makes progress.
Totally.
And you're not going to get it right the first time. I would be shocked. If you do, would you call me and tell me how you did it? Because I don't know. Right? And in that meta conversation, you would come up with some sort of cue word, right? Where you would stop, you would have a stop. And I like the cue word to be weird, so that it's not something you normally say in a conversation, so it can't be confused. Right. Okay. And then inside of that pause, so once you pause, I love staying in the same room. This is not about abandoning each other. I'm all about how do we own both simultaneously. My friend the other day was saying, I'm just going to call you Two Truths, Jules. You're holding both hands all the time. This is true. So I'm thinking like, oh, we could hold two things at the same time. I want to keep myself safe and I want to be connected. And the reality I am embracing in this moment is right now, whether I like it or not, some part of my brain just tagged you as danger. But I wonder if that's true. But I wonder. Let me pause for a second and just wonder. Be curious with yourself, not judgmental. I wonder, what's coming up in me that's tagging this sweet person who I'm trying to be connected to as potentially dangerous to me? And out of that, who knows what comes next? I can't tell you what's going to happen once you're in that space of curiosity and kindness towards yourself. I can't tell you what's going to unfold in the relationship next. But what I would say is, what I have my people do who come into couples therapy with me is when one partner thinks they're cool to continue, they turn towards the partner, but do not talk and wait until the other person also does a turn towards.
Wow.
When they both do a turn towards, here's my first ask is before you talk, look at your partner and see if they look attractive to you. If they do, chances are good you're back in that right prefrontal cortex. If they look gross or bad to you, it's time to go ahead and take a time out. Your cortisol is probably already released in your bloodstream. Go ahead and take a break.
Wow.
Oh, that's such a good indicator.
That is
holy
wild.
shit, that's so good. Wait. So then that brings up something. You had recently in a podcast episode, you had talked about a rage is a bid for connection.
Yes. I love rage.
Can we connect? Well, and
us.
I don't know if you don't know this about me, is I'm a rageful, grandiose woman, and I have done a tremendous amount of couples and marriage intensives in my marriage.
Yep.
Because that is me. That is how I incorporate things, and it has taken so much to try to not hate myself for that. Because that was filled with a lot of hate. To have this anger, especially as a woman, right? To like feel angry and rageful. And I think also as a mother, that's like, it feels like a lot of shame.
Totally.
But that there's like something to that. So I'm obsessed. Tell me more about rage as a bid for connection.
Okay. So let's look at it in infant world, and then we'll apply that to that thing you just said. Okay. So this is Jaak Poncep's work for anybody who cares about the neuroscientist who wrote a ton about this. He wrote a book called The Archaeology of the Mind. It's great and incredibly dense. So if you're not into dense reading, skip it and just go with this. This is a Cliff Notes version. Okay, so the seeking system, he did a ton of work in the seeking system, the midbrain, which is that top of the brainstem. That system is dopaminergic. So it innervates you with energy to reach out towards. So when that seeking system first reaches out, it's reaching out towards eye contact, care from a caregiver. And if it's met, we get the oxytocin release and we move into care and we get our needs met and yay. If it does not get answered, the first thing that happens is panic grief. And you can feel this if anybody who has kids out there, if you've heard a baby, maybe you have a niece or nephew, heard a baby crying, you can hear that like, it gets your attention real fast, right? Yes. It's like, what? Right? That's that panic grief. And it's meant to bring you back into care.
Wow.
Oh, and the mom pays attention and here we are, right? And then if that doesn't work, we move into fear crying. So that's more of a shrill, like, right? There's something not okay here, right? And of course, dad pays attention to that, brings the baby back into care. If that doesn't work, we escalate into rage. And I read about this for years before I had a kiddo. And I'm such a geek. I was with my child. I was on the kitchen floor for some reason. I don't know what I was doing. I was doing something with her,
hanging out.
But I was hanging out on the kitchen floor, but I was working on doing something, folding napkins or something with her I had my hands and eyes away from her. And she's talking to me next to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm listening. Go ahead. She starts escalating into that whine. Baby, I'm listening to you, but I did not look at her. She grabs my face and whips my head around. She goes, Mommy, listen to me. And I went, in my head, yeah, Poncept is right. Rage is a bid for connection.
Wow.
Dang, that worked. And of course, at that point, because I'm such a geek, I did say that in my head in the moment and went, oh, sweetie, you're right. I was not paying attention to you. And then we made up and we had that little moment. Now, if you lived in a household early on where rage was the thing that was answered most frequently, it was the most successful, I would guess you would escalate towards rage faster because you would learn, your history-colored glasses say, this is not going well. I know what to do when things don't go well. Rage like that. And that is not your fault, hon. You were taught that works. So of course that's what you do fast. Of course.
Yeah.
How validating that is in so many ways, because I think it is easy when there is a rage response to be hard on yourself about it after, right, to understand that it's this bid for connection as opposed to how it's read as, oh, you're trying to hurt your partner, you're trying to there's control, that it's this real need for connection, I think just is so validating.
Yeah. Well, and I don't say that to excuse how it lands on people.
Right.
But I say it to understand it.
Yeah. And I think it's such an interesting part, right? Because we're talking about it's absolutely a bid for connection. I'm thinking about this interaction I had with my daughter a few weeks ago where I had my phone in my hand and she took the phone out of my hand and threw it. Yeah. And I wanted to be really mad at her. And I was like, you know what? You are fucking right. I was on my phone more than talking to you. And that sucked. But I think there's this part also is if you had this childhood experience of okay, well, people answer my rage. I finally escalated enough, somebody would hear and see me. Yeah. The hard part is in your adult relationships, often it causes people to run from you. Of course it does. And then the shame is so significant. right? And
it
you're
pulls
like,
you
but
into total despair, doesn't it?
yes. And you're like, oh, I so badly want humans, but also nobody can handle my feelings. And I think it also brings up that very childlike state. And the childlike state, I know for me, is what keeps me then in the fight being, when I go into my grandiose, like critical part.
Yeah, of
Yes.
course. And so that's why so I recently wrote a book called Setting Boundaries That Stick. And I talk about four different kinds of boundaries total, but two different larger sort of umbrellas. One is that external boundary, the kind you would think about between you and other people, but the other kinds are all internal boundaries. How do you keep your mind safe from the psychology of other people? How do you keep them safe from your psychology? How do you keep people safe from your behavior? How how do you come into relationship with yourself in a way that is so deeply kind and also firm enough to really get that you do have influence on other people? Right? And so I think about that as like a containing boundary where, oh, I own that I have influence and I'm going to use that empowerment as much as I can in a way that fully aligns with my relational and personal integrity. And can I set up a practice? See, I'm big on practices.
So
you can
fun.
already tell with my time ends. I'm big on practices. Can you set up a couple of cue words and a gesture that's going to help the basal ganglia, which is part of your subcortical brain, help you execute at speed a containing boundary?
Interesting.
What would that look like? Like, what would you
Well,
suggest?
yeah, I'm curious if you're willing to do an experiment with me.
Me?
And Emily,
Emily.
you were talking.
Yeah,
Emily, you were
yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Are you willing for me to work with you just
Yes.
a little bit
Yes.
on it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I wonder.
I want to say no, but yes.
This is good.
I hear that maybe. I hear that maybe, and I do not push on people's boundaries. Because really, it pushed back on me, and I'll explain it with a case if you don't want to do it.
No, let's do it.
No. Okay. So I wonder if you could notice 2 or 3 moments where you acted in such a way that you went, yep, that was me and my value system. I did awesome.
Okay.
Could you picture a couple, like take a snapshot of a couple, 3 moments of those?
Okay.
If you had a few words to describe that human, how would you describe her?
Brave.
Okay.
Strong.
Uh-huh.
And soft as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. And if there were one word or phrase that incorporated brave, strong, and soft, is all 3 important? Or is there one word that feels like, oh yeah, that's it?
I don't know. I want to say brave and soft. I'm not sure.
Brave and soft. Perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
Brave and soft. Okay, great. Now, I wonder if you could picture yourself with your child.
Okay.
Picture yourself with your partner. And picture yourself with a stranger.
Okay.
And imagine that sweet human was in relationship with each one of those people in a way that was really awesome. And is there any word or phrase that might describe across all 3 of those how that person loves to be in relationship?
Honest. I go back to brave again. I go back to like this. And I think also transparent, right? So part of bravery for me is transparency. I mean, moving away from people pleasing, moving away from, really diffuse boundaries. So I feel like that's bravery for me.
Awesome. So honest, transparent.
Yes.
Yeah. So brave, soft, honest. Those would be keywords for you.
Okay.
Yes? Does that feel true?
Yes.
And just check it out. How does your body respond? Is it going, oh yeah, that's good?
It feels good. Not only does it feel like, oh yeah, it's good, but then it also feels like my chest is a little bit less tight.
Yeah.
Like I could like breathe a little bit.
You got it. You got
Yes.
it. Yeah, great. Now, I wonder if you could imagine a really good friend had a hard time. They were going through something tough, like, ooh, sticky and awful and hard. Is there any gesture that you would do with your body? Like, let's say they were on the phone, you couldn't actually touch them, but like, for me, it's like, oh, I put my hand on my heart when somebody's having a hard time. I wonder, what do you do with your body when you're offering compassion to someone going through a hard time?
I feel like I actually hold myself. Like I hold a certain part of my, so you talk about your chest. I think I put it over my hand on my stomach, like I hold my gut or something.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's your right hand. Yeah.
Yes, my right hand. That's it.
It's
Yes.
your right hand.
Yeah.
So you put your right hand over your belly. Okay. Great. So now match right hand over belly with those words: brave, soft, honest.
Brave, soft, honest.
Good. And what's that like?
It feels nice.
Good.
Feels like nurturing.
Great. Now go back to a moment where that rage came out.
Okay.
Yeah. And now play it out in your mind. And in one moment, just freeze frame it. And then put your hand on your belly and say that in your head: brave, soft, honest.
Brave, soft, honest.
Yeah. And if you did that in that moment, would you have been able to stop yourself?
Yes, I feel like the holding to myself, there was something that feels very nurturing and mothering to myself in that moment that would make it okay to have walked away or to taken a break or to hold on to myself. Yes.
Right. And it doesn't mean you don't come back and say what you need to say.
And it feels
means you don't give yourself permission to say it in that way.
And it feels very different than my experience of like, you need to go away.
Right.
Because that feels, yes.
Yes.
That's what feels bad.
Yes. Boundaries, for me, it's not about getting the other person to do anything. It's about, what are we doing?
Wow.
Because here's the secret. It's terrible news. I have terrible news for everyone. You cannot control other people's feelings, behaviors,
terrible.
or thoughts.
We hate this.
That is the worst news. We always say that's the worst news. We deliver it to people.
And as someone who like spent so much time in Al-Anon and had like addiction in my life, right? Growing up, like I also think like I am like, I struggle so much with codependency, which becomes very critical and controlling, which sucks for everyone.
It sucks for everybody.
Yeah.
And there's no way you don't do that, because what the hell else are you gonna do? You're in this completely uncontrolled environment. Of course you learn to manipulate and control people, because it was the only thing that kind of sometimes worked. Of course. Of course. Yeah. So there's a containing boundary practice. Wow. So then I have people practice it a lot, even when they're not triggered, so that it's so automatic. When you are triggered, you can put your hand on your belly and go, wait, what were those words? Even that will create a pause between what you feel and what you do, so that you can check, oh, is the thing I'm about to do really going to be brave, soft, and honest? Ooh. If not, I'm out of my integrity. It gives you an option to give yourself a second to empower yourself to stay in your integrity.
Oh, I love this.
Ah. My heart is in my stomach. Like
that's why I wrote the book. It's because I want to care. I want people to be like, oh, did you know you could be connected and safe and empowered all at the same time?
Well, and I think there's something also to talk about it in terms of, I think especially women have been so socialized about how they should be to other people. I love you're talking about in terms of our own integrity of who I want to be. Because I think especially for women, it's so taught of like, well, don't upset them or make sure they're happy. And this is so dramatically different of like, no. This is actually you. Yes.
This is about celebrating how amazing you really are.
Well, it also doesn't make you resentful towards your fucking partner, because when you do all the right, I mean, that's the other thing is like, then you're not resentful towards all these people. Especially if you struggle with boundaries and you're sitting here and you're passive aggressive and you're resentful and you have all this other garbage. This is so dramatically different.
Right. And in order,
it
go ahead.
gives you all of the empowerment, right? It gives you all of the power and all of it's all of that empowerment piece of it, as opposed to giving it to someone else to say, you have to give this to me.
Right.
I get to give this to myself.
Exactly. Because how even do you set an executed boundary with someone else, right? How do you embody that? What work do we need to do on the inside in order to support ourselves when someone has a hard reaction? Which that's more of your mentalization neural network. Yeah. So I have practices for that in there too. So there's this question of, oh, they're looking at the world through history colored glasses too.
Yes.
Oh, what I just did was only this much of, a teeny, I held my fingers close together. Those who are just
watch this. People need to watch this episode on YouTube. People watch it on YouTube, everyone.
I love it. So I have some influence over how someone feels and thinks, but don't forget, they're wearing history colored glasses too. But their history is more influential over what they feel and think in this moment than anything you just did. The second you really get that. So I have this thing that I talk about. I don't know. Do we have time?
Yes.
For you, anything. Keep going.
Anything. Keep going. 17 hours.
I'm never logging off.
So what is emotion? If I asked 100 different emotion researchers, they would tell you 100 different things. There is no consensus. But if I look at it like a Venn diagram, where all those little circles, if I look at where do they all kind of overlap, here's what I'm seeing. Oh, you have to do this really hard thing. Your brain has to guess what's going to happen 3 to 5 seconds from now in order to allocate resources properly. So you can even feel it right now. Take a moment, let the chair hold you up just a little teeny bit more than it is right now. Like really trust it. It's got you. And then you're not going to do anything. But just imagine I'm about to stand up and check out what happens in your body. Yeah. All of a sudden, you'll move out of that deep breath space into a little bit shorter breath, into sending energy in your legs, however you stand. If you're a person who's like, oh, hell no, I just went for a run, you probably went, and sunk deeper into the couch, right? No, we don't have a universal response, but you will have a response. Why? Because the brain is using all this thought and feeling data as a part of guessing where to send resources in your body so that they're ready for you 3 to 5 seconds from now. Well, that's a complicated thing. How the heck are you going to guess? You base your predictions on your history, plus a scan internally of resources you have available in this moment. How tired are you? How hungry are you? How cold are you? Right? So you take resources of moment, everything you've ever learned, stimuli from the outside, and go, what does that mean to me in this moment? And it comes out in this, I love what Antonio Damasio said. He said, emotions are cognition, like any other cognition. They're the result of a curious physiological arrangement that made the brain the body's captive audience. So what does that mean in English? I love him. He's a poet. He makes me happy. But it means the brain's going, how am I doing? I'm cool. What do I know about this moment from every bit of my history? Am I cool? And then your brain is going, I have a meaning for you in a little packet of information that we like to call emotion. And those emotions are moving, boom, 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 one after another, after another, after another. There's no moment when you're not feeling something. I got into, by the way, when I started this work, I got into an argument with my therapist because I was in a just shitty place. How did I get into the job like most people get in this job? Right, I was in a shitty place in my life. I went to therapy and went, damn, I want your job.
Yeah, I'll fix this. Right? I'll fix it.
But my first 3 months were spent arguing with him about whether or not feelings mattered. My argument was they didn't, and they were stupid. Right? And then because I am a geek and because I thought therapy was probably woo-woo and bullshit, I went into the neurobiology to wonder whether or not it was bullshit, and found out that it wasn't, because feelings are actually you becoming yourself through time. What?
Wow.
Right? Okay, so think of self not like a solid thing like a rock or a table. Think of self like a river. And if you went to the banks of the valley, banks of that river, it looks the same day to day to day. But if you skipped it for 20 years and then came back, it would look like a different river. And why? Why is it changing? It's because of the flow of the water and the drought and the rains and all the things, right? The outside affects the river, and the inside of the river affects the river.
Mm.
What is that flow of information that's so constant that is our river? It's your emotions. So if I want someone to feel differently than they are feeling, what I am asking them to do is to not become themselves. Rather than greeting them with kindness or firmness or boundary, whatever you need, because not everyone has a pause between what they feel and what they do. And sometimes what people do is not okay. I do not use any of these skills to be an advocate for sticking around when somebody's being an asshole. Go. Right? And sometimes I think my husband's being an asshole. And those are my history colored glasses. And sometimes he is having a feeling, but he's not actually doing anything that's harmful, but the feeling feels scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I need a psychological boundary there, right? To
Ooh.
separate me from him so that his feeling doesn't feel so scary to me anymore. Because I don't want to mess with it, because that would be messing with him becoming himself through time.
Yeah.
Oof.
Wow.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is so important about that too is, right, as you said, our partners, people we're in relationships with, have their own lens, and to be very conscious of that, right? Because if we can understand that it might be bringing up fear for us, and our reaction to them keeps them from becoming more of themselves,
Totally.
and then how that affects the two of you interpersonally.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And my level of curiosity matches the level of closeness I would like.
Right.
So, for example, somebody might say something. Here's something to know about me. For those who are seeing me here, you wouldn't know this. I'm 6 feet tall, which is an unusual height for a woman. It gets a lot of attention. My husband is 5'9". That also gets us some attention here and there. So it's not weird for me to have this experience. Other tall women you can go ask them and they will join us in this. It's not a strange question for me to walk into like a convenience store to pay for gas or something and have the guy behind the counter go, "Wow, you're tall. Is it hard to get a boyfriend?" I've heard this so many times. It's shocking. Usually the guy behind the counter is short. Anyway, it's some version of that.
Right.
Ooh, you're tall. Is it hard to find a partner? Right. Okay. So for some reason, they feel totally fine asking me this question. My level of curiosity about why they feel totally fine asking me this question is relatively low, because I don't want to be close to that person.
Mm-hmm.
But now let's flash forward and go, okay, I'm going out to a party with my husband and I have on wedge heels, and he looks at my outfit, he looks at my shoes, he goes, "Would you mind changing?" Now he knew he was shorter than me when we married. If this, I don't know what's going on, but my level of curiosity about why he wants me to change my shoes today and not yesterday or the day before that or whatever is actually very high. Why? Because I do want to be close to him. But how can I keep in curiosity? I have to keep myself safe, which means I have to not take that personally. I want to help people with practices that are not just advice, don't take it personally, but literally how. How do you work with your lower brain not to take it personally?
Holy shit. Okay.
Okay. I love that. We have nothing. We're just flabbergasted. I don't know.
That's why neurobiology can set us free.
I
love it.
It is so fascinating, which is why I was dying to get you on, because I knew that our reaction would be just our mouths wide open.
Yeah.
With no
I know that we have to do calling bullshit because we have to eventually end this episode.
Right.
But I don't think we ever do this. But will you come back again? I mean,
I would love it.
We never have guests on twice, but can you come on maybe 15 times? Because I think we have a lot to talk about. And I also saw that your intensives are booked up until the end of 2024, right. And this is going to be my way of getting it.
I love it. Yes, I would absolutely adore it. I love you all. I love your podcast. Anytime.
Okay. All right, Jules, something we do on ShrinkChicks is we do this thing with all guests where we say calling bullshit, where we ask them to call some bullshit in their field. A myth you want to bust, anything at all. What is some bullshit you'd like to call today?
I would love to call bullshit that setting boundaries is about getting people to do something you want them to do. That is a direct request. Boundaries have nothing to do with getting other people to do anything. Boundaries have to do with you saying, here's what's okay with me. Here's what's not okay with me. If the not okay thing happens, what am I going to do next, given whatever the reality is I'm in? Like, I'm a white chick. I get some freedoms to say some shit that other people in our world do not get to say. I'm not about, hey, you should do boundaries the way you should do boundaries. I have a thing about, like, we have a lot of messages out there about here's what a boundary should be if it's healthy. I don't think anybody out there should define for you what a healthy boundary is except for you, because you're the only one living in your context, and context matters. And what's okay or not okay for me in my context, and what's okay for me to do on the back end when it's not okay in my context, is not the same as everybody else's. So I want to move us away from, hey, you're not respecting my boundary because you didn't do the thing I asked you to do, and into, oh, let me ask first. And then if it doesn't happen, let me pause and wonder, what do I do in response to that? Given the context I'm really in, and given what I think healthy boundaries mean for me in the context of my life right now.
All right.
Oh my God,
Jules. Where can people find you? Where can they hear more?
Because you will get a lot. You'll get a lot of people.
I love it.
Where can people find you after this?
cleariskind.com.
Oh, good. And when is your book coming out? Tell us the name of it. Tell everyone where they can find it.
Sure. It is coming out December 1st. 2023. It is available for pre-order already. Yay for pre-orders, because they tell my publisher people want the book and they'll print more.
We're doing it right now.
Yep.
And it's called Setting Boundaries That Stick: How Neurobiology Can Help You Rewire Your Brain to Feel More Safe, Connected, and Empowered.
Amazing. Buy the book, pre-order now, listen to Jules, contact Jules, follow Jules. I don't know what else to say. Thank you for listening to today's episode of ShrinkChicks. We always ask you to rate, review, subscribe. I bet you liked today's episode. How the fuck could you not? Please send it on over to a friend. You could follow us on the therapy group or ShrinkChicks. Work with one of our clinicians at thetherapygroup.com. You can buy our merch on ShrinkChicks.com. We have a journal on Amazon. We have lots of things. Jules, thank you for being here today. It was absolutely an honor for us.
It is a delight. Thank you. I feel so grateful that you had me on. Yay.
Feeling is mutual.
Feeling is mutual. And I bet you enjoy, Jules. And then don't ever forget that to grow yourself, you got to know yourself.